we're rolling.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Miaskiewicz.
You got it.
For everybody listening, I've been stressing about your last name like for weeks now since we had this locked in and scheduled, and I've been like saying it over and over and over again in my head, and I knew right when we started recording I would mess it up again. So thanks for bearing with me. But I'm so excited for everybody listening. Tom you're an associate, you're a professor of marketing at Fort Lewis College at the School of Business up there, but you're also their AI strategist, and I had the opportunity. Gosh, it's been a while ago now at the SBDC conference, however many months ago that was, I don't remember. But I got to sit in on your presentation about AI, and I right away was just like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to Tom. I've got to pick his brain. So this has been a long time coming, getting this scheduled and getting you here. But I'm so excited about it because you've been, for so many reasons, but one is I think that your background is awesome, and I just think that your story and getting you here to Fort Lewis College has been really cool for me to hear about. But then also now kind of this idea with being an AI strategist and how that's tied in with Fort Lewis and the community and local businesses and all of this stuff. So I mean, you've got the things like you guys recently launched the AI Institute at the Center for Innovation.
Yes.
You've been doing these free AI community workshops, and then we were just talking off camera about the Four Corners AI conference that just wrapped up, and it's wild to hear, I don't know, in the last year, all of these initiatives that you've sort of brought to the forefront. And anyway, so all of that to say how excited I am to be able to pick your brain and how much I appreciate you taking the time, because I know you have so much going on and wearing all these different hats. So long introduction, but Tom, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we definitely have a lot going on. I'm sure we're going to dive into, but yeah, wear many hats. I told somebody I have like 4 positions right now, which I think is a positive. Yeah. Most of them are AI related.
Yeah.
So definitely, it's kind of taken off and been moving really fast, which is nice. I'm not spearheading these things. We have leadership that believes in what we're doing. You can't do the work that I'm doing without having the provost that kind of pushes forward with AI, gets me this position, obviously. So definitely, there's a lot of people that enabled this. It's not, just me at the college. It's the infrastructure, the people, the resources that you need to make all of this happen.
Yeah. And before we dive into that, I'm hoping you can humor me a little bit. I just want to get a little bit of your backstory in, because I think it's important to the context of the conversation. I would imagine 10 years ago, if somebody said, hey, Tom, you're going to be the AI strategist at Fort Lewis College, you probably would have, been like, what even is, we all would have said, what even is AI? But do you mind just, kind of giving me that background of what brought you here and kind of the series of events that have led to, now you wearing the 4 hats, as you mentioned?
And they're 4 related hats, so it doesn't feel like 4 separate hats.
4 all in different, the different sideways hats.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like the reason why my name is as hard to pronounce as it is, I'm originally from Poland, so born there. Kind of my academic / professional life, probably the first thing to mention is my undergrad's from University of Pittsburgh in computer science and business. So I took my first AI class in like year 2000, 2001.
No way.
Yeah. And I remember the professor saying, this is going to be great. This is going to change the world. And, obviously AI wasn't anywhere close to where it is today. So we kind of laughed it off, but it's kind of funny to think about that
in
moment.
hindsight.
So then got the computer science degree. During then, that was the whole .com boom. So I got into tech during like the last 2 years or so. My undergrad, I was like an agency tech startup. Then moved to Boston and joined another tech startup. I was actually their first hired employee. So
nice.
Did all that, kind of helped to grow the company from the founder's attic, and did that for 3 years. And then, kind of got it was kind of a good point to transition back to academics. I always had this urge to kind of continue my studies. So I got my PhD in at CU Boulder.
Right.
Did that for 5 years, and then actually moved to Portugal and was a marketing professor there. Came back, did a startup for a little while, doing user experience design work. Actually, it was more than a startup. It was a SaaS company that was growing. It was kind of a mid-sized company by the time I joined there, but felt very startup-y.
Right.
And then, came back to academics, went to as a professor to CSU, and then finally made it here, Fort Lewis, like 8.5 years ago. So my original role was in the marketing department as a professor, and then kind of these newer hats came about in the last year or so.
Right. Well, and I think that's part of what's contributing. I mean, obviously the topic of AI, is intriguing for everybody. But I think why I'm specifically so excited to be able to pick your brain is that you've had these intersecting journeys of, the private sector, tech, small business, higher ed, academics, and all of these things. And I think that, that perspective is valuable when it comes to the conversation of AI. Just because it's there's so many different variables with it and applications and, impacts for it too. And so I just think that it's unique that you get to have, though that track record of perspective on it. Do you think that that's set you up for success, now to wear the hat of the AI strategist hat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of a funny backstory. There's this AI tool called Google LM that people use for all sorts of things, but one of the kind of quirky use cases is to throw your CV or your resume and your LinkedIn profile at it, and then kind of tells a story about you. And funny enough, it kind of took all these experiences, which to me were, kind of separate experiences, and put it together.
Wow.
And kind of told the story of basically how everything I've done in the past
has led me
there. So AI actually helped me to make sense of this background where, I've been bouncing around quite a bit within academia, private sector. Even within the private sector, my roles have varied quite a bit. But I think, kind of what the AI tool helped me recognize is that it all kind of prepares me for the current role. Like understanding technology, its applications, like that's not new. AI is, I think, a more powerful and profound example of that. But I think, as far as my background, it kind of helped me prepare my thinking in terms of like thinking about AI very broadly as opposed to kind of just focusing on specific applications areas. And hopefully a strategist is able to think about it broadly. So within the college, there's many ways in which AI can be used. It's a teaching tool. Students use it as a learning tool. Staff use it as maybe a productivity tool. Professors use it as a tool to help them kind of refine their teaching, develop materials. There's all sorts of uses, and hopefully I can kind of use my background to understand all of those uses and how they fit together and the resources that you need to enable people that want to experiment with AI, and frameworks people need to help them direct their AI exploration specific areas. So I think being able to look at it from a high level kind of comes from my background.
Yeah, which I think is so unique, and how cool to know that there was that tool that helped with sort of that benefit of hindsight. That's so fascinating to me, because I get it though. Like you even as humans, you don't realize where you're headed until you get there sometimes, like with our life journeys, and then you look back and sometimes it all sort of makes sense. You're like, oh, of course I was, headed this direction or whatever. Like for me, my entrepreneurial journey, now that I have the benefit of hindsight, it's like I was born to be an entrepreneur. I kind of see that now. But how cool to know that there was kind of the tool that provided some clarity, and the tool is the and the end result too, or the stage result too. So I'm curious, and I have a lot of questions that I want to talk about in terms of how AI has been impacting higher education. You had mentioned the how students are using it, so I definitely want to get there. Help me remember to get back to that.
Okay.
But you had talked about, kind of even just your experience in like the .com bubble and, tech startups and things like that. And your approach to learning and, adapting or utilizing, different technology advancements, and obviously AI being a more broad one and a more powerful one. But I'm curious, from your perspective and your advice to anybody listening, how to approach learning and kind of utilizing AI different or similar to when we first learned how to use email or social media or whatever, but any other iterations of technology. Do you have similarities or differences with how you approach the two?
I actually find AI to be the most accessible just because how we interact with it, right? There isn't an interface you got to learn. There isn't some sort of complex terminology.
Like back when we were all coding on our MySpace pages?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, there is kind of a barrier to using that tool. I think with, generative AI tools, the barrier is really just, not jumping in there because we know how to have a conversation with someone and really, it is different talking to an AI, but how we do it, and we're just using, everyday language. There's all sorts of discussion of what good prompting is, but for me, at a kind of fundamental level, it's just having a conversation where you're clearly conversating in the case of AI with AI, but it's very similar to how we have conversations with people. We give examples, we provide an objective, we kind of direct their attention to specific things, just like good kind of conversations with AI in which we are looking for a specific output. That's why I always like to say like managers are the best prompters because you explain things very clearly, you have clear objectives, you have specific tasks that you want somebody to perform. Same with AI. You got to give it an objective, you got to give it constraints, you got to give it specific tasks. So I think compared to other technologies, what makes me really excited about AI is like really anybody can use it. Obviously, there's now barriers as far as cost. There's limited free versions versus the more powerful AIs cost money. Like ChatGPT just released a pro version, which is $200 a month. So you're seeing kind of the cost as far as access go increase. But at a fundamental level, there's really no barrier. And now, especially now with these multimodal AIs, in which we just talk to our phone and have a conversation with ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever large language model you're using, it's really accessible, which is really exciting because everybody can kind of benefit from it that wants to obviously use it. There's no requirement to use it, but if you feel like you have a use case, I don't think like you need to go and take a formal class. My advice is just start using it and then maybe like fill in some knowledge once you want to get into more advanced uses. But as far as just basic things, the technology's there. You can have a conversation with ChatGPT and maybe, do something with it.
Yeah. I love that. Just your insight or kind of that context of conversation, like a human conversation where you've got to kind of give it some examples and, parameters or guidance or whatever it might be. I'm curious, knowing that from an adoptability standpoint, it's sort of, I don't know, it's more intuitive to human beings than, whatever other version of technology that people had to learn. Would your advice be to the general public that they should at least play with it and learn it? Or do you think that there's a world where some people maybe don't need to, become comfortable using even the most basic AI tools?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody. Like AI is a tool you either bring to the table or you don't. Yeah. That's a personal choice. Even at the college, there's no like you must use AI policy. Everybody makes decisions whether it's right for them. I will say that so my favorite book on the subject is called Co-Intelligence by an individual named Ethan Mollick. He's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a White House AI advisor, works with Fortune 500 companies. And the reason why I like that book has these very simple principles. And principle one is always invite AI to the table. So like just trying it usually helps people understand the technology, understand if it's right for them, if it provides value. Also, in general, the more people use AIs, the more positive they are about them. They kind of see the value of them. People become a little less skeptical, at least the current versions of AIs. So I think it just kind of helps to understand what this technology is and wrap your head around it and determine, is there a place for it? I mean, again, it's like a personal decision. For me, I use AI in all sorts of things, but I didn't realize where I was going to use it until I just started using it, bringing it to a table. Like I tell some colleagues at the college that sometimes, prompt ChatGPT like 70, 100 times a day. And it's very basic tasks. And it's for me just exploring, where is it going to be good? Where is it going to be helpful? Where am I not going to use it in the future because it failed completely? But you don't really understand that in your specific context, your world, until you use it. Yeah. So I think that's like a philosophy I like, just kind of bringing it to the table and then making a personal decision. Is it something that you want to continue bringing to the table? Do you want to kind of increase how much you bring it to the table? But ultimately, I don't think you get there until you have direct usage.
Right. Have there been examples of times when you've been surprised that because you had mentioned, bringing it to the table and testing it in the different, areas of your work or life or whatever. Do you have any examples or takeaways of ones that you were surprised that it was helpful with and that you're going to continue to use it, or ones where it wasn't helpful and you sort of assumed it would be, that you kind of learned something when you brought it to the table?
I mean, broadly speaking, it's been really good at idea generation and some basic creative tasks. When AIs were first being released, the assumption was it's going to help with kind of basic repetitive tasks, but it's actually really good at brainstorming and being a thought partner in that regard. Also everybody has this moment where they just kind of find an application area and they just keep digging and digging and digging and digging. In that same book, Ethan Mollick talks about having a sleepless night with AI, where you just find something really fascinating and you just keep prompting it and you're constantly surprised what is emerging from the AI. I mean, in general, I think what's surprising about AIs like ChatGPT's large language models is this idea of emerging abilities where they do things that they weren't explicitly trained to do, like programming. We just threw a bunch of code at it, and now this large language model is able to program, or language translation. Nobody taught ChatGPT how to translate between Polish and English, but it knows how to do that. So it's always surprising, what these large language models that are getting really big, and this is where these large language models become really capable as far as these emerging abilities, where they're going. There's things that are constantly surprising. I think even people at these companies, that they're able to do these things based on just having these massive amount of text thrown at them, and they have these capabilities that weren't literally explicitly taught.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that excite you or concern you that there are these capabilities evolving that they weren't necessarily taught?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the present state, I think it's exciting because it's a massive productivity tool. If you're a coder, it's going to help you code much quicker with less errors. If you're, or even somebody just trying to learn a language, it becomes very efficient, helping you become very efficient in that learning task. There's this idea of where this is going, this idea of super intelligence and what these kind of super intelligent AIs look like, powerful AIs look like. And that's, I think something that I think individually everybody should start thinking about and forming their own opinion. I think it's, AI, just like usage, I think also thinking about its implication for yourself, for your job, for your career. I think that's something I encourage everybody to start doing, because I don't know if it's scary, but it's something that I think everybody needs to start grappling with, because there are some predictions as far as where this is going, and the present state AIs are not like what people are predicting future state AIs are going to be, and those future state AIs have more profound implications. For some fields, maybe more profound than others.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would answer that question as something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. It definitely keeps me up at night sometimes. I think about it very deeply, but I think about it personally as far as my job, the college I work at. I encourage everybody else to kind of do that as well, because I think it's helpful to hopefully, I mean, you can never predict the future, but if you can kind of glimpse into the future a little bit, I think that can help you make specific decisions in the present.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of like being a human, right? Like thinking about what's coming next and kind of getting ready for that. AI, I think, is kind of a very profound technology. But we've been doing that for a long time. As technologies get released, you're thinking about, all right, given my current job, now that we have the internet or social media or the typewriter or a calculator, what does that mean for my current field?
Right, and how do I evolve? And I would imagine that there's probably some benefit in even just familiarity, with it. Like you had mentioned of, and I want to actually pick your brain a little bit on the predictions and where it might be headed. But just coming back to that idea of like, I don't know, playing with it or getting comfortable with it, there's probably value in that for just the human element, and then business applications or academics or whatever. I'm thinking back to just recently, I was at my parents' house over Thanksgiving, and my dad showed me a picture on his phone, and at first glance, it's this magnificent photo of a herd of elk crossing a river, and aspen leaves that have changed colors, and it's like elk in the San Juan Mountains, and I'm like, hold on, and I zoomed in, and I'm like, that's AI. Because you could just tell that the animal wasn't perfect and the thing was there, and zero consequence interaction with it. But it was a little bit of a profound moment for my dad and I of like, ooh, you do now, and I think that there might be some benefit to that, just in a good practice, just in general, of like kind of having a critical lens of the things that we're seeing online, and where content's coming from, whatever it is. But I just thought that there was some value in the fact that there was some familiarity with what an AI image looked like versus what a normal image looked like, just to kind of help with the comfort level of wherever it's headed. I think if we're familiar with it, it can kind of help ease some of the, I don't know, the unknowns, about where it might be. I've been asked very frequently how AI has impacted our business and our agency. I'm in a digital marketing agency, as you know, and you want to talk about a path divided of like how we could approach that. One path is doom and gloom and terror and fear, and the other path is really optimistic and exciting about how it can enhance my business and enhance my offerings for my clients and whatever. I've always been of the belief, though, that the human element matters, that humans like to that humans need human connection. And at the end of the day, there's kind of it's the latest iteration of technology, but the humanity component of it is where I don't have as many sleepless nights, because I'm an optimist to a fault sometimes. But I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit on, some of those predictions, or like, I don't know where it's headed, and knowing that with the caveat that you don't have a crystal ball. I mean, we all know that, but just because it's fascinating to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of privileged in my role to be able to kind of spend time actually like taking stock of what people are saying. Obviously, I'm not in Silicon Valley, but if you hear enough voices and listen to enough podcasts, and actually to the benefit of the AI companies, very kind of transparent in
good point.
Where they think this is going. The founders are talking about it. I think one way AI companies could have approached this is, think about the competitors and not talking about, where their specific organization is going. I think to their benefit, they're all trying to get to a successful place as an industry, as opposed to just trying to compete against each other. Partly because there's so much money in this field that they all can kind of share in it. But
the pie's plenty big.
But yeah, I mean, there's like modality is one big one that you're seeing like this week, basically. So modality is just the type of data that's coming into a model, large language model, like ChatGPT being one, and what's coming out. So how we interacting with the model is changing as far as modality. So today, actually, when we're recording this, ChatGPT publicly released the ability to interact with the world visually through your phone. So basically, you open up your camera, you point it at yourself, or you point it at your office, and you can ask questions of the model as it's seeing the physical world through your camera lens. So that's available or starting to get rolled out to paid ChatGPT users today. So that's definitely like something that's profoundly going to change how these models interface with our lives, right? Like if I'm getting ready for an interview and I'm a student at the college and I can get some like real-time feedback on, is this kind of the professional enough for this type of job, or maybe I want to practice my presentation before class. Like it can actually not only provide feedback on my audio, but
your mannerisms.
Exactly.
And wow.
Yeah. So that's something that's like near term. You're seeing more and more of that. You're also seeing shifts in what we can generate with the models. So again, this week, there was a public release of something by OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. It's called Sora, which is text to video.
Yep.
It's only 5-second videos, but it's available to the public where I can come up with a prompt for a video that I want, and the model will generate that video. So that's definitely in the near term, you're going to see more and more of those types of AIs be available to the public. Now, the fortunate thing is usually there's some sort of paid access. It's not going to be free because like the text to video generation is massively expensive for companies to do that, to serve up those prompts. I think like now jumping a little bit further in the future, it's kind of the broader capabilities of these models. So my favorite kind of thinker in this space, as far as the companies go, is an individual named Dario Amodei. I'm probably mispronouncing his name.
That's Amodei, the trend for the day.
Amodei, yeah. I think. He's the CEO of a company called Anthropic, which has a large language model that's a competitor to ChatGPT, in my view. In many ways better than even ChatGPT in writing and coding. And they have a large language model called Claude. And they've been known as a company that's very like risk averse. They've been warning about AI risks. They're at the forefront of AI safety research. He actually left OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, to become CEO over some of these concerns.
Interesting.
So anyways, the fact that it's coming from him, I tend to kind of, given the background, I tend to be a little more receptive, not to say I don't trust the other opinions that are out there. And he published this essay, which is a really lengthy read. It's called The Machines of Love and Grace, and it kind of looks at capabilities of AIs, timelines, and then kind of the impacts that these capabilities will have 5 to 10 years out after they're available to humans. Biology, as far as impact, economics, governance. He kind of covers many diverse areas, and it's well-researched, well-written. Obviously, this is just one person's voice, and
sure.
We should just read it as an opinion piece. But I thought it was very thoughtful, so it definitely captured my attention. And the one thing he put in there is this idea of what a powerful AI looks like. So the assumption is what we have right now is not the powerful AIs.
Wow.
And powerful AIs have these super intelligence capabilities. So I'm not going to list all of them, but like some of the more profound ones is AIs are going to be at the level of a Nobel Prize winner in every field that we care about. So just think about that. That's available to you as a human to use to interact with a person that a machine that is capable of a Nobel Prize winner in whatever field you're in. The speed, so they're going to be able to perform actions 10 to 100 times the speed of humans, and they can also interface with the things that humans can interface with. So they can surf the internet, they can make calls and call humans. So that's a pretty profound shift. The other thing, which is kind of a trend you're starting to see in the near horizon, is this idea of AI agents. So right now with chatbots, it's very back and forth. I'm going to prompt, I get a response, I'm going to follow up, and it's kind of an interaction, which, it works, but it's different than what an AI agent does, which is we give it a broad task. And there are some early versions. Anthropic has one called computer use, where you can give it a general prompt saying, I want to, let's say, like develop a website on this topic, and it will basically control your computer, do all those tasks, download the code, run the code, start the server, and you're not constantly prompting it. It's just going out and doing
from a broad prompt.
Yeah, from a broad prompt. And these AI agents are going to generally run on devices so they can actually interface with what humans can interface with on that device. So they can go to Chrome and query Google and go to actually the large language model and talk to itself.
Right.
Like, there's all sorts of things that when you first see it, you're like, wow, this is like really different. And the fact that seems like we're moving in that direction is pretty profound. So anyways, it's a long-term trend that we're going to be having these AI agents where we give it a task. Right now it's tasks that might take a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes to do. But in the future, the prediction that Dario is making is we can actually give the AI a task that might take days or weeks to complete. So it's like a higher level task, broad objective, and the AI just does the work and comes back to us, and the human gets involved at that point once all this work has happened.
Right.
So that's this idea of super intelligence. We have these powerful AIs that have all these capabilities, and what has caught my attention is just some of the timelines that people are associating with these powerful AIs. Not too long ago, you were hearing like a decade away, but Dario talked about having these powerful AIs being available, at least the early versions of them in 2026 or 2027. They're seeing kind of the technical barriers to get there fall. And they're becoming more and more confident. Now, again, you can't predict the future.
Of
maybe
course.
He even says, maybe it's 10 years out or 100 years out. We can't predict it. But I think the fact that they're trying to have this conversation very openly, I think it's the reason why individuals should pay attention. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, had a very similar message. He published this essay called The Intelligence Age, where he talked about these super intelligent AIs being available in a few thousand days.
Right.
So Dario's not the only one talking about it. And I think for me, the fact that 2026 doesn't feel that far away.
Yeah.
2027, maybe it's 2028, maybe it's 2030, but all of it seems really close. So I think that's where my previous message of like everybody starting to kind of think about what a more powerful AI means for them, for their field. I think it's important.
Yeah.
And I think you were right, as we were kind of leading into this conversation. The only way to prepare for it is to use the AI. So the present, like these more powerful AIs are gonna feel very jarring and like unsettling if you don't use that power today. Exactly. Yeah. So that's another reason why I really encourage usage of the current tools is the AIs are just keep becoming more powerful. There's these new modalities, new features, new capabilities. And the only way to prepare for them is to get comfortable with what exists today.
Right.
So it doesn't feel as unsettling.
Right.
I think if a human got this super powerful AI as the first interaction with this large language models that we're working with today, that was their first interaction, it would feel really unsettling. But I think hopefully we kind of ease into it and it becomes something that we embrace and we can solve all sorts of world's problems if we use it to its capabilities, and hopefully there's additional prosperity and within medical fields there's diseases being solved. Dario talks about like all cancers basically being addressed within like 5 to 10 years of
Could you imagine?
Yeah. And he talked about lifespans increasing, like the benefits to society and humans are pretty profound, but I feel like there's all sorts of things that we have to kind of wrap our head around as humans, and obviously there's like economics and jobs that go along with it, and making sure we're like shifting.
We have to have jobs to thrive.
Yeah. So there's a lot to think through, but I think I encourage everybody to use AIs and then also just start kind of grappling with what a more powerful AI might mean for them.
Yeah, and there's probably it's such sound advice, I think, to like ease into it, because at the end of the day, we've all seen the steep curve that technology evolves with, and so I don't think it's that far of a stretch at all to think that some of these things that are on the horizon, that the timeline could be condensed. Yeah. I mean, even since ChatGPT has kind of become the norm, or it's a common phrase now in normal conversations with people just in the public. That has even evolved in the last few months, even the capabilities of it. I'm curious, do you have kids?
Yeah, one kid.
So I have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2. And one of the things that I've been fascinated with is how intuitive technology is for my children. Probably the same perspective my parents had on us, with different mechanisms or different platforms or whatever. But I'm kind of curious your thoughts on, one of the things that I was thinking about when you were saying that was, I was like, man, if I could have a powerful tool like that do my email responses, like if I could have something, emailing for me, what an opportunity cost that would save for me to then be using my time and my energy, elsewhere. Like my gears were just cranking on it. But I'm curious if you think that, for the younger generation, how ingrained it's going to be into their, upbringings, and I want to get to academics too with it, or tips and tricks for, how somebody can start kind of introducing AI to their kids to set them up for success. Because I think, and the whole reason for that vague question is that I think for a lot of people, unknown, the response to unknown is fear. It's like, gosh, and from a father's perspective, I'm always thinking, how can I set my kids up for success, whether it's financially or, with good ethics or good work ethic or whatever, but also thinking about, okay, how can I make sure that my family is set up for success as the world is going to continue to evolve and things like that. Just kind of curious if you've considered, approaches to the younger generation and familiarity with that, or do you think it's not a problem? It'll be sort of intuitive, like so much technology is for these young kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on what I'm hearing in school districts like Durango, 9R, like AI is being introduced at pretty formally into the curriculum. So I think there's going to be like formal introduction that's associated with standards, and I think it's going to be a good way for students, for learners, for individuals to kind of skill up. So I think as long as you see kind of responsible, appropriate uses of AI, there's going to be formal schooling that does that.
Right.
I mean, I think actually the advice I gave earlier applies to kids as well.
Kids, yeah.
Like with my son, we play around with Midjourney and generate images, and like I think it's not becoming foreign to him. Like he understands the concept. Like I also just like other kids in the Durango School District, he gets this like workbook in the summer to kind of make sure that he's not losing things between grades. And over this summer, I had the audio mode in ChatGPT, and he could ask questions as he got stuck on problems. Not to say I wasn't available there, but I think it's nice to kind of introduce this concept where an AI could help him with what's in front of him right now. So I think it's just kind of natural integration with what's happening. Yeah. I don't think you necessarily need to force it. I think there's going to be natural places in which AI makes sense. I think, you also got to be cognizant, like once you see like some of these art tools, like you want to make sure that kids are still seeing the value of the human process,
right,
and the creative process. Also cognizant of that, like it's small introductions, here's this capability, but also reinforcing let's say we're talking about art, like you need to be able to kind of do it on your own without the tool. The tool is something that exists out there, but it's not replacing what you should be learning in general, because you can only use these tools once you have fundamental skills.
Right.
I think that's something that's important regardless of kids or people in college or professional disciplines. I mean, like you can't prompt it about something you don't know anything about.
Right. Yeah. And then you would have no discretion to know if it's quality or accurate or whatever. It's interesting though, because I remember when I was in school, all of our teachers were like, "You're not going to have a calculator in your pocket," and now we're like, "Haha, I have a calculator in my pocket." So it's just funny how academics and technology, are constantly evolving, and I don't know, kind of that back and forth. And I'm curious. I would love to hear your perspective on AI and as it relates to creatives and the human element to it. I'll paint a little bit of a backstory, but we're a creative agency here, and one of the things that we specialize in is commercial video production. We make everything from TV commercials to feature-length documentaries and whatever. And we've integrated AI into so much of our processes, and while obviously maintaining the human element of it. Where it's been hugely helpful for me is storyboarding. So we have these creative ideas and the creative concepts, and now we're tasked with conveying that to a client before it's done, which has always been a challenge in the creative space. And now we're able to use AI to, generate images and help say, hey, here's how this shot will look, and here's kind of how the story will flow. It's been a fun tool for me there, but I know that a lot of creatives are nervous about, where that line lies, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on the relationship with AI and the creative space, art, music, painting, photography, videography, writing, those types of things. What's your take on how the two are related?
I mean, I think it's like a tough conversation because you can see the impacts even today. Like if I want to create a logo for my business, like I can use Midjourney and create something decent.
Right.
Like I think it kind of allows individuals that wouldn't be able to do that. But I think, at least my hope is that there's still, first of all, like a desire from individual, clients for like the human element on top of the AI. You can get these AI tools to generate hundreds of things. Most of them are going to be really bad, and the human's able to pick out what's good and iterate on it, and maybe change it beyond what the AI can do, or come back and prompt it some more. I think AIs are going to allow us to create something okay or good. Maybe in the future it goes a little bit beyond that. But I think there's still going to be this human creative lens that goes on top of the AI to select it, to refine it. I'm also optimistic that, like, as humans, we're going to seek out human things.
I love that.
So, like, within the art space, one possible outcome is actually human-made art becomes more expensive. Because we just really want that. Or the same goes with music. I love live shows, and then because it's very human, there's really just humans
you can't
there.
Replace that. Yeah.
Humans around me. It's a human experience. There is instruments, but it's a very basic kind of technology, and I like that, and I seek that out. I think more so. So, like, now I'm jumping into personal. I spend so much time with AIs that I really seek out like human experiences and human created things more so. I think, like, I'm big into like CrossFit, and like I love going from AI to like a very human experience where it's just you working out with other humans, having conversations and sweating and all of that. That to me is actually even more something that I seek out even more.
Yes, I love
so
that.
So I hope that like other individuals kind of get to that same mindset where we actually value human creative works and human touch, and in the context of your organization, like the fact that like you took maybe something that had some AI assistance, but you took it to the next level, and that there's kind of this human element to it that's coming across. So I mean, I guess I have an optimistic view of it. There's a lot of obviously lawsuits around artists having their artwork basically be used for training, and that's still in the court system. I'm definitely sensitive to that, but hopefully in the long run we have this kind of general trend across the arts where the fact that it's human-made makes it very, very appealing, and even more so than even today, because we're used to most of kind of the creative process being a human process. But when AI kind of infringes on it, we go out of our way to seek out kind of the human part.
Yeah, no, I first of all, I love that perspective, and I share it. But the way that you worded that, to make it a little more concise, but this idea that as AI advances, the human element could become more valuable, which I couldn't agree with that more. It's been fascinating because one of the things that I mean, obviously we're on a podcast right now. I'm a content marketer, like that's what I do. I love content marketing. I think it's one of the most powerful ways to grow a business and grow an audience and things like that. And I've been saying forever that, the key to effective content marketing is authenticity and vulnerability and like real human connections. Like nobody can ever replace the fact that I'm sitting across the table from you, having a long form conversation with no distractions. Neither of us, we have no devices or AI or whatever. And I think that in terms of an impact, especially now as the world is getting even more inundated with content, because we can produce it in mass now, that the quality content is going to be more valuable, much like the human element is going to be more valuable. What a refreshing, perspective on that. Because I've shared this story on the podcast before, but recently I went camping in Moab with my family, and we ended up at the bottom of King Creek. There's no cell phone service. One of the best 3 days of my life, just to be truly disconnected, present with my family. And I think that we are seeing that where there's probably obviously, a spectrum, but generally speaking, there are things that make humans human, the connection, and for you, CrossFitting and exercising and nature and those things like that no amount of technology could ever replace, which for me as an optimist it just excites the heck out of me. And I love thinking about those ideas that you had mentioned earlier, which I want to come back to, but of how it can enhance humanity. You had talked a little bit about like cancers and things like that. Do you have any perspective on some of the positive impacts that it could have on things like economies and that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the toughest one because that requires kind of like big macro changes. Just like other technologies, it increased prosperity, it kind of grew how much was available to us and increased incomes. And, hopefully AI is the same, even maybe more so,
right?
Where all of a sudden we can do more things more efficiently and, there's more money and resources to go around to people. I think the tricky thing is obviously there's going to be some shifting in jobs and fields, just like you saw with the internet, typewriters, et cetera. Like we had to shift from something to something a little different, and kind of made sure that humans were able to do that shift.
Hey, I sold phone book ads all the way until 2020.
Yeah, I mean,
talk about a shift, know?
The problem of AI.
Now here I am talking to you about AI.
Yeah, I mean, the problem of AI is moving very quickly, so
right.
I think these shifts need to be relatively brisk.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm an optimist, but at the end of the day, I think about it and, I think it's going to just require a lot of humanity to make this work for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's also now these models are just massively expensive. I saw somewhere the latest ChatGPT 4.0 model costs like $100 million to train. In 2025, some people are predicting some of these models are going to be costing $10 billion to train. So these are private companies, and they're going to need to make sure that they obviously get that money back some way. So AIs are going to be something that powerful AIs is something that you're going to pay for. So obviously that could have impacts where some people can't access the best AIs, the best tools, the ones that are going to kind of help you in your job the most, and some won't. So hopefully maybe, just kind of thinking into the future, maybe there's like government funding that hopefully increases the equity as far as access goes. I mean, we're even starting to see that, within the college where, some students have the paid version of ChatGPT, some don't.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a concern that I have because I know I'm on the paid version. I know how much of a better tool it is than the free version. So you're starting to see that. And again, I'm optimist in the sense that we'll figure that out in the long run as these tools become more and more ingrained in work and school, that we'll figure out how to make sure that everybody that wants access gets access. I mean, the economic puzzle, I think, requires people that are within government, that are in Silicon Valley, to really make those decisions to kind of set us up as a humanity for success. Again, I'm an optimist. I wouldn't be in this field where I didn't think that at the end of the day, my involvement in it is going to lead to positive for humanity.
Right. Yeah.
So kind of, I guess it's kind of ingrained in me having the role that I have is I'm going to be optimistic about it.
I think
but
you have to be.
But yeah, I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be easy.
Right.
Just like, just think about the internet. That was not easy.
No.
But we made it work.
Right.
In the long run.
Adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
Have you, from knowing your kind of involvement and especially with the community classes that that you've been putting on, and I just think it's so cool. Just huge shout out to Fort Lewis, and I don't have as much context into what other institutions are doing, but I have obviously been able to see how Fort Lewis and you have been kind of creating this community around AI with our local businesses and the school and the college and things like that. So hats off to that to begin with. I just think it's great that you're even doing these the free AI classes and all of that stuff. I'm curious in terms of like impact or commonly asked questions or concerns from the attendees of that. Have you seen trends in terms of how the general population has been approaching it, or kind of how you've been helping the small businesses navigate it?
I mean, I think it's mostly positive. We also had that AI conference with about 400 people there, and there was, I think people appreciated the balance as far as pro and con, concerns, and like what we're excited about. So I think the framing and kind of the general discourse was very balanced within the conference, which I think led to a positive experience. But kind of coming back to those workshops, so first of all, I want to make sure that kind of the reason why I'm able to do the workshops is clear. So the Katz School got the amazing donation from Mark and Jane Katz, and I became an endowed professor, and that one of my initiatives is doing these workshops. So there is a huge donation behind the scenes that's enabling
Shout
this.
out to the Katz.
Yes, exactly. So I'm excited to do it for free, and kind of I have the Center for Innovation, which is a space that the business school lets me access and put on these workshops, which I find a very kind of intimate experience. It's topics that I'm finding kind of top of mind. I just do them once. It's in person. It's usually, like let's say about 20 to 40 people, maybe a little more after the conference. But it's like it's I think a nice space to have a conversation, open conversation. So as far as your concerns, I think everybody's thinking about like, all right, what does this mean for my field, my small business? I'm in real estate. How do I use it today, and what are the impacts in the future? Or I'm doing consulting, or I'm doing accounting. I think it's the same types of questions. It's like near term, it's very focused on productivity gains. More long term, like where is this all going? And maybe there's bigger shifts that I should be preparing my field for. The other one that keeps coming up is kind of data privacy. So we're feeding massive amounts of ourselves into these models. Every time we prompt it, that's going into a model, and that's used to generate a response. So, I think there's some concern around, big tech knowing a lot about us. My ChatGPT account gets used all the time, and I'm conscious of what I'm using it for. I don't use it for like any student data or anything like that. But I am conscious of like, is this
that it's going somewhere?
Yeah, it is going somewhere, and it's nothing that I would be concerned about necessarily, but it's still a lot of information about myself and my job, and I think everybody else is seeing that, because now with these new modalities, right? If we're going to be talking to it, it's going to see our office. You can point it at your computer screen. Right now, even with ChatGPT, you can share your computer screen and have it provide feedback, let's say, on some code you're writing on your screen. So there are some considerations like what is right for my business. I think this is where kind of policy and governance and having those discussions within small and big businesses matters a lot. You need to establish kind of the framework around AI usage. I think also individuals are kind of thinking about like what is right as far as
where the line is.
Yeah, about them. Like what kind of information do I want to talk to this model about? And also I should mention, this is where the whole like free versus paid thing is. You have more data protections when you're at the college. We're running ChatGPT teams, which doesn't expose your prompts to the large language model. They don't train on it. Versus in the free version, technically that is available. So,
Right.
so that's another concern with free versus paid. You're getting better data protections and privacy protections. So yeah, I think kind of the impact within the discipline, and then I think concerns around, data and where it's going and how it's going to be used, and what kind of data should I be putting in here, and what data should be for another tool, or potentially not even,
or not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's wild, and sometimes for me, you talk about it as a efficiency, builder right now at the current stage, but I can definitely see how that line is so finicky about between helping with efficiency versus relinquishing control over it. I recently, uploaded financial. I have the paid version as well, and asked it to analyze financial reports. And something that would have taken me a full day to, look through, 5 minutes, and somewhat valuable. But to your point, you mentioned earlier that you have to have that level of education to then analyze what it fed back, and kind of checking that out. So yeah, but I never thought about the data privacy side of things. You've mentioned a few times, government and equity and, accessibility and things like that. Where do you think those lines lie long term in terms of, regulations and regulatory, efforts on this? Do you think that that's going to be necessary, and that's a critical component of it? And if so, where does that kind of lie?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one for me to tackle, to be honest. I mean, I will say that even some companies are pushing for it, like that company I mentioned, Anthropic, based on what I've read, they're for specific types of regulations. I think, personally, I think we do need to be thoughtful of AI safety, like before a model gets released, like what kind of testing does it need to go through?
Testing process.
And they have specific benchmarks to the industries, kind of to give them kudos, like they are thinking about it before even government's thinking about it. So I think a lot of times now it's driven by the AI companies, because if you think about it, it's in their best interest for this to go really well.
Ooh, good point.
Because as soon as there is a big issue with AIs, then the whole industry gets hurt,
right,
potentially. Now, all of a sudden, we have resistance to AIs, justifiable resistance. If AIs cause harm, then humans are probably going to push back on that, right? So, I think right now it's very organic how much government gets involved and other institutions. That's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's in everybody's best interest, however we get there, to make sure we get to whatever endpoint we're going with these powerful AIs, to get there responsibly. Maybe it comes from industry, maybe it comes from government, maybe there's some sort of new organization or some oversight board that gets formed. I don't know. That's not for me to decide, but I think everybody that's at least in the industry and that's like working with AIs, I think everybody genuinely wants everything to be safe and responsible, and to have kind of the right introduction of AI into our lives.
Right.
So, but long term, yeah, it means hard to speculate on how all this whole landscape ends up being regulated, and if it's regulated and all that.
And how so.
Yeah.
But what a good point you brought up, that it's in their best interest to make sure this goes well. I had never considered that, because, sometimes you get kind of like the doom and gloom, or, I don't know, I'm here doing my podcast to say how scary AI is so I can get clicks or whatever. I'm kidding. But, there's sort of that narrative that can exist with, I at one point even saw a stat that there was some X percentage that AI could, ruin human, cause human extinction or some, some extreme clickbaity type thing. But that idea that the companies, behind this need it to go well. Otherwise, it's the end of, it could negatively impact that industry in a huge way. I think that's a powerful perspective to remember, and kind of comes back full circle to this idea that there could be some really, really profoundly positive impacts on humanity from it, and good to remember too that the people behind it also want it to go well because they want us to pay for it. They want us to keep going.
Yeah. No, I mean, everybody, I think, hopefully has the same goal in mind.
Right.
Regardless of whether you're a user or not even a user of AI today, but maybe in the future, or you're within industry or within government that somehow has a role in AI. I guess I'm, again, optimistic that everybody is kind of looking out for each other.
Yeah.
You want humans to take care of other humans in this capacity as well.
Tom for president. If somebody's listening right now and they've had a fear of AI or a hesitation or intimidation or whatever, but somebody's never, ventured into that world, what would be your advice to them in terms of like how to get started or where to initially start kind of learning about AI and tools and applications and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can come to my workshops. You can come to our conference.
I teed that up perfectly. I didn't mean to, but
but I mean, I actually, I think it's a good way of kind of getting a framework, some examples, getting some maybe like initial starting points, but not to say like you can't just get started today. Like ChatGPT, there is a base version that's free. If you've never used it, you just go to chatgpt.com and the tool is there. You sign up for an account, and I think the best way to start using it is to find something where you think it can help you. So maybe you're generating ideas for something in the context of your discipline or even your personal life, like travel destinations. And probably it's easier to get started with some sort of like personal use. So let's say, you want to take a vacation, you're curious, as opposed to using Google or all the other tools that are out there. Maybe I can do this with an AI tool and kind of going through that process of like maybe getting it to generate ideas for travel destinations based on a few parameters, and then getting an itinerary, and then getting some accommodations suggestions, and then seeing can actually help me select a flight. Maybe the free version it probably wouldn't, but running into that barrier, I think that's the best way. Just kind of find a specific thing in your life that you want to address and see if bringing AI to the table helps you address it, and if you enjoy kind of bringing it to the table. For me, part of the reason why I enjoy it so much is I bring it to the table and I say, wow, that was like so much more efficient. I don't even really enjoy doing that. So I don't mind AI making that super efficient and quick, and I can move on to the things I really want to spend my time on. So my hope is like if somebody brings it to the table, maybe it's not once, but a few times for some things that are happening in their lives, and they start finding value in it, then they're more open to it. And potentially the case is no, and that's a perfectly fine answer as well. Like,
right.
You don't feel comfortable with it, and it's not for you. And again, I keep coming back to like ultimately it's an individual choice.
Yeah.
Other than obviously like if you're in a professional setting and there might be some organizational norms or expectations around AI usage, but when we're talking about personal lives, yeah. I mean, to me, I think that's where a lot of my learning happened. Is I just was doing something in my life. I needed some sort of information, or I needed to make some sort of decision or generate some ideas, and brought AI to the table. And in a lot of situations, I thought about the status quo before AI and what AI did for me. And a lot of times it was better, even like kind of the feeling in the process felt better than the previous process. A lot of things that we do today, there's a lot of friction, and that sometimes AI can help you overcome, where you get to the endpoint much more efficiently in a more enjoyable way. In a way,
give me an example of that, where AI helps remove friction in a task or something that we do regularly.
I mean, I'm going to come back to this concept of modality, and that's why I like these new ways of interacting with AI. So previously you had to, open up your web browser, go to chatgpt.com, formulate a text prompt. I was constantly like jumping in and out of things I was doing. which to me kind of distracts me from the task. It doesn't fit seamlessly with what I'm doing. But now, for example, I have the desktop version of ChatGPT, which just runs on my desktop. I turn it on and off when I need to use it, and I just turn on the audio mode. I was preparing for that conference presentation, and I was just like kind of working through what I wanted to say. Instead of like formulating what I wanted to say, typing it up, getting feedback, I just had the advanced audio mode of ChatGPT open, and I would just say what I would have said, what I was planning to say to the audience,
right,
and got real-time feedback, like slide by slide. I asked it to make things quicker. I was worried about timing. That was going to take too long. So it helped me brainstorm like things I could cut out, which is it's really amazing at that. So for me, I love the fact that I can just have it be there, be a thought partner or like a collaborator or a tutor in certain ways. And I don't really have to break away from what I'm doing. It's just kind of there when I need it. I turn on the audio mode and just have this conversation with it. And it kind of coming back to a lot of things we talked about earlier. It's like, I understand this AI, it's a machine, but like it's very intuitive. Yeah. Like I just like talk to it just like I would to a human, and I have this amazingly knowledgeable collaborator that can provide really good feedback on the spot. I don't have to like break away, like I'm move on to the next slide and then I can talk to it. I don't have to like stop thinking about my presentation and interacting with the AI. I mean, same goes for like basic tasks like cooking, you're like stumped about a recipe or you're not sure like what is the right amount of something. I love how it can kind of fit seamlessly into that experience where I don't have to like open up my computer or like type something into my phone. I can just ask it on the spot. Now with this video mode, it's even going to be more profound in that regard, where I can point at it on my pan and say,
what's wrong with this?
Yeah, like, is there too much of something in here? Like, why is this not thickening? And they can provide you with that real-time feedback. So I love that part, that I can just kind of do what I'm doing, but get some assistance along the way. And again, it's still my task.
Right.
I'm the human, like, but as humans, a lot of times we need assistance. That's why Google and the internet exist.
That's why, exactly.
But I think this is a more intuitive, more powerful way of getting the assistance that we need. So I still like, my presentation was my presentation. Didn't say it was like, I wouldn't consider it an AI generated.
Use AI to do an AI presentation?
Yeah, that would be pretty dystopic. But I did get a lot of feedback along the way, which kind of helped me refine my thinking, how I was going to say things.
Right.
It's really good at making sure you're saying things in a way that everybody understands.
I was going to say, I have seen that, where people can use it to say, like, I'm trying to convey my message like this. Here's my email. Can you make it sound more, whatever, professional or friendly or, even QuickBooks now has AI integrated into it for invoice reminders. And depending on how past due the invoice is, the tone of the email changes, and I can go in and be like, well, that's a good client, so let's be friendly, even though it is, however many days past due. I'm curious, and I forget the term you used, but that idea of like going from one medium to modality, from whether it's the video or spoken word to a different modality. I recently saw there's a company that has a humanoid type robot. That they're demoing or testing or whatever, and it was on a social page that I follow. Curious your thoughts or perspective, or even like, your crystal ball that we established we know you for sure have, and have this perfect vision into the future. But it was fascinating to me to think about how AI softwares can be integrated into hardwares, and in this case, simple things like I was thinking about how enhanced my family's life would be if there was something that did the laundry and folded the laundry and did the dishes or whatever. Curious on kind of how you see or what your take is on in what ways it might be possible for AI to kind of cross over into the physical world, and if you think that that's a realistic possibility on the horizon.
I mean, you're starting to see demos of it, so it's starting to seem realistic. Yeah, there's Tesla that's working on their humanoid robot. There's a company called Figure, which OpenAI, the company of behind ChatGPT, is working with. So their model is actually running within the humanoid version of that large language model. I mean, if we think about our lives, right? Like, there's probably certain things we hope humanoid robot would do for us. Like, I really don't love doing laundry. If somebody could,
it's the worst.
if I came home and it was done, and now I have 30 minutes for something more meaningful, getting outside and going for a run or something like that, I would love that. So I think again, it kind of comes back to application areas. Like, there are certain benefits of having kind of a humanoid version of the AI where it can interface with our world. Obviously, that's like where a lot of the fear is coming from, because that takes AI out of, the computer, the phone, and has it interface with our physical world.
Now the robots take over and we're in World War whatever.
I mean, hopefully we don't ever get to that point that everybody's seen enough movies. So, I mean, that's, again, where kind of the responsible development hopefully comes in. But, to be honest, like, I would love to have something like that. But then again, it kind of comes back to equity. Like, how much would those robots cost, and who would be able to use them? And is it allowing people with means to just have something that lets them, have more ability to create more wealth, and et cetera?
I was just going to ask, do you think there's a chance, and this is almost just more of this is a personal, like, world view perspective question, really, more than anything, but do you think there's a chance that it could widen the gap between the haves and have-nots? Like in this case, for example, that humanoid robot, if and when those come to market, there's gonna definitely, I think, be significant cost barriers to that. And now the guy that already has the money doesn't have to do the laundry, or doesn't. Of course, I guess that demographic of people are already hiring help. Mm-hmm. Anyway, generally speaking. But curious your thoughts of, do you have any concerns at all about a separation there, or are you an optimist so much to the point that you think that humanity will help make it equitable and accessible and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I will kind of divert the question to what the CEOs are concerned about. And that's one thing that you are hearing is like the equity picture. I mean, to their credit, they are saying we do have concerns about that. Like, who's going to have access to these powerful AIs? We're spending billions of dollars, whether it's the humanoid version or just the large language model. Like, these things are costing massive amounts of money, energy, and there's obviously also environmental concerns along with all of that I'm conscious of as well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something, but that, again, kind of going back to previous conversations with, internet wasn't free initially, and it was something that only certain people got access to initially. That's
a good point.
Dial-up.
Look at TV prices.
Yeah, so hopefully, like, the same economic forces apply to AI. We're becoming more efficient, how we use this compute, and hopefully in the long run, like, some of these costs start going down as opposed to going up. So I guess, thinking about previous technological revolutions, initially there was a barrier. Like, I remember having like Prodigy internet dial-up. And the only reason I had it, my dad was a scientist, and, we're one of the few, but, internet still costs money and still a barrier for some people. But, it's something that at least, if you come up to college, it's available to everybody, or to the libraries.
Right.
So maybe we find like these spaces where AIs are available to everybody. You go to your library and you can use the most powerful AIs, or you go, to a public institution and those AIs are available to everybody, and we fund that. So we have more equitable access. I mean, I guess, it's, again, an optimistic view, but just kind of thinking about previous technologies.
Yeah. There
was barriers, and then hopefully economic forces open it up to everybody. I think humanoid robots, given hardware costs, that's, I think, a little more challenging, because, that's always going to be something costly.
Right.
So maybe there's another way of making sure that they're available, or maybe, there's like a rental model.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe there's an HOA robot. It's like you get it on Tuesdays, they get it on Wednesdays, or whatever. But
you would think that, like, similar problems that we ran into In the past, we developed some sort of solution. Some of those solutions are going to apply to AI in the long run.
Yeah, what a good point. That, generally speaking, technological evolutions have sort of, there is that steep curve, and then it kind of becomes, common and accessible for everybody. Pricing changes, even with hardware. There's hardware specific technologies that have become incredibly affordable that used to not be. I'm glad you're an optimist. Tell me about, just, and to kind of wrap us up, but where do we talked about kind of like the somebody who's never played with AI, how they can dip their toe in the water. And then there's guys like you that all you do is play with it. Walk me through, or somebody who's more advanced, where do you go to make sure that you're staying up to speed on this stuff and that you're not getting left behind? And how are you doing your kind of continual learning, and where can people look to for things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there are websites that have great resources. One's called Ben's Bites, which is a funny name, but bite-sized pieces of AI information. Like, I want to develop a dashboard. Here's kind of an AI tutorial for that. I like it because it just kind of takes a use case that might apply to you and then just kind of walks you through in very simple terms how to apply AI to that use case, as opposed to just trying to do everything at once. It's just finding these little use cases is generally how your knowledge grows. You apply it enough places, you start kind of seeing it more generally and can apply it beyond what you're learning about in the tutorial. Yeah, I mean, there's also, thought leaders. I mentioned Ethan Mollick. He's on LinkedIn. He's like the one person that I always check on an almost daily basis what he's saying. And what I like about him is he plays with the tools. He gets early access to a lot of these tools, given how ingrained he's in the industry. So you're kind of seeing where this is going.
Right.
But he's also really good at thinking about like AI in organization. Some of the things that we talked about, he's got really nice kind of accessible content. And he writes in a very kind of non-technical way. Kind of, I think everybody can understand at least general themes of what he's talking about. So I really like him. I mean, there's amazing amounts of YouTube content that's out there. There are sites that kind of update you on recent innovations. Even just Wall Street Journal and places like that do talk about AI. Popular press. So just at least being like seeing a headline and actually reading the article helps.
We have to actually read the article.
Well, okay. It's nice when it's like in a general outlet.
You could put the article into AI and ask for a summary.
Yeah. That's an option. There's plenty of books on the topic. I already mentioned one. I really like that book as like a general entry point to AI. But like, as far as like more advanced use, it again comes back to what we talked about. Like, I just use it more.
Yeah.
I use more tools. I experiment with new tools. I try to build AI solutions. Actually, that's where I think the real learning happens is you take something that AI can help and actually like go through the development process.
Right.
And a lot of times that will take you down kind of more technical or more advanced parts of AI. Like one example, the colleges were experimenting with like an AI advisor that might be able to answer basic advising questions around like, what is a credit hour and how many credits do I need to graduate? The information is elsewhere. We're not using it or envisioning as replacing human advisors,
right.
But there is like some 24/7 help that maybe AIs can allow us to address. And I'm working with other individuals on that project, and we're kind of jumping into these APIs, and we're kind of really getting into like detailed prompting techniques, because with this you need to really hone it in on what is the correct answer, and we're developing knowledge bases and training, or like using the model to retrieve that information very efficiently. And we're almost at a point where we can kind of beta it with some students and get their feedback. So we're conscious about that. But through that project, learn all sorts of things. And had to get through all sorts of barriers. And we had a lot of like failures along the way, and we got stumped. And for me, I mean, yes, you could read a tutorial, you could come to a workshop. I think that's great, but then at the end of the day,
bring it to the table.
build with it.
Yeah.
Like, I think most businesses have an AI solution that they probably could build today. Most individuals, maybe even their personal lives, could create something. There's ChatGPT and these large language models, which are general purpose, but AIs can be personalized really quickly and efficiently. Idea of custom GPTs, which is like a tailored version of ChatGPT that through natural language, you can kind of create your own personalized AI. But you really don't get what a, let's say, custom GPT is until you build your first custom GPT.
Right.
You can come to my workshop where I talk about personalized AIs. But even in that workshop, I encourage somebody within the workshop to build the first custom GPT
Right.
because you just really don't get it. And it becomes, I think, a little too foreign and complex until you go from like idea to solution. And then again, like you might say, you know what, I went through the process and the AI doesn't help. Like even in the context of AI advisor, like we're like coming into it with open mind. Like maybe it's not something that's reliable enough, helpful enough that we ever use beyond just testing of some students. But we're going through the process and experimenting and see if there is like AI help that can address a potential problem that students might have, which is maybe like using other sources for getting that information. This might be a more efficient way of doing it. So for me, maybe it's my background where I just always wanted to jump in and try to build something.
Yeah.
But with AI, I think the best thing about it is, again, it's really accessible
and intuitive somewhat, Yeah,
it becomes more and more intuitive as you use it more and more. It's kind of a very kind of natural learning curve as you're kind of getting into more advanced things. You're kind of pushing the AI further, and coming back to our previous conversation, also helps you prepare for kind of capabilities of the future along the way.
Right. Tom, thank you so much. We're the smoke alarm's going off. And it's not an AI smoke alarm. But no, just to kind of wrap, I want to thank you for so many reasons. One, thank you for giving me your time today, because I know how valuable that is. We talked about how many hats you wear, and so anyway, it's not lost on me. So I appreciate you making that happen. But I also want to thank you for the impact that you're having on our local community. It's like I said, I don't have perspective, elsewhere, but I do know how lucky we are in Durango that the businesses have these resources with the Center of Innovation and, the conference that you guys have put on. And it's just so cool to see, doing the best we can to be forefront and educating people and empowering people, and the work that you're doing there matters a ton. So I want to thank you for that. And then lastly, I want to thank you for your perspective and for your optimism. I think the world needs more of that, and it has been incredibly refreshing to get to sit across the table and hear from an AI expert that shares, my optimism and, a lot of my worldviews about humanity and the importance of the human connection and creativity and art and, all of these amazing things. So for all of that, thank you so much. I have a shirt for you that I forgot to grab. It's in my drawer, but here's my symbolic handing you. I'll get it to you when we stop recording. But it's one of my Inspired by Example shirts, because I'm on a mission to inject positivity and to empower people and to inspire people. And you're doing that in so many different ways, with giving people the courage and the confidence to start to play with these tools. But also, like I said, what a refreshing, just optimistic, humanity perspective that you share with it. So I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. We scratched the surface, I know that. But Tom, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your time as well. Yeah, and this outlet to talk about AI. And again, I just want to give a shout out to all the leadership within the college. Like, I'm just a messenger here. We have Provost Martinez, Dean Elias that are like supporting these initiatives, Mark and Jane Katz. Like, I'm there kind of getting the benefit of the support I'm getting. Our interim president, all those individuals are kind of allowing us the space to do that. So those individuals that want to run with it, we have the venues and we have the resources, and I have my paid subscriptions that I have funding sources for. Like, none of that happens unless you have leadership
Right.
that's supporting it, and we're conscious of doing it, in the right way, and people within the college ultimately make decisions around what the right place for AI is, especially in the classroom. But as far as me personally, I get to kind of run with it. I have the forum, the benefit of having these resources to hopefully spread some sort of good message around AI, optimistic message around AI, and then hopefully get people the confidence to kind of jump in there and build with it.
Yeah, it's working. So thank you.
I appreciate it.